What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to talk about some book recommendation as a programmer. The first thing is Python, the most familiar language to me. So the first book I recommend is the Python Crash Course. It is very friendly to people with zero experience about programming. So it has two parts. The first part is the basic syntax of this language. For example, you will know what is a for loop, what is a function, class, objects, variable, all those kind of things. So after the basic syntax, the second part, it lets you to create some interesting stuff with some examples. For example, you create a Python game. You can also create a website using the Django framework. So this book can just make you familiar with the Python language and the programming within a very short amount of time. It might just take a week for you to get familiar with every stuff. And another book I recommend is the Fluent Python, given that you have some background or experience about programming. If you come from another language, the Fluent Python is just a brilliant book. So basically, you need to know that why Python is so powerful, because it has the first-class function, which means that you can pass a function to a variable or a function into any data structures. And you can pass the function as an argument into another function. So given that property, like a lot of easy syntax are created. For example, duck typing, list comprehension, and the decorator. Basically, you just learn the syntax and you can just write on fly. So during my career, I think I have read many books, like over 10 books about Python. Many books are very specific, so I won't recommend it. For example, the Robust Python, Effective Python, Python 3, Objective-Oriented Programming. All those are very specific, so I won't recommend. Another reason why Python is so powerful because it has thousands of third-party modules. For example, like machine learning or deep learning, like physics, finance, anything you can imagine, like you can find a Python module. So another way of learning Python, you can find a book related to your background. Say, if I'm a financial guy, I could take a look at Python for finance. You should have some objective in your mind to make you learn this thing very quickly. What I mean is you can just join some data zone, hackathon, or codathon with the contest within your school or your class. Given that you have zero experience about programming, one way could work is you just buy a book and relate it to your background and you just crazily reading it. And finally, don't forget you can always ask AI or ChatGPT if you have something you don't understand. You can ask it in a very detailed way. You can just view AI as a very fancy searching engine. It has infinite patience, so you can just ask it anything you have a concern or you don't fully understand. You can just take notes in Notion or Obsidian apps. That's too much for Python. Let's go to the JavaScript. So JavaScript, the first book I read is JavaScript, The Good Parts. So it's a very old book. It was published in 2008. So it's following the ECMAScript 4 standard. So we are now using the ECMAScript 6, the 6th generation. That means a lot of syntax is now included in this book, but it's still a classical book. It's a short one. A book I recommend is the JavaScript, The Definite Guide. So in North America, I think like at least half of the programmers have to spend a lot of time with the JavaScript because it's the only language for the front end. So that means like for many people, you need to know the JavaScript in details. So this definite guide, it explains everything in a very clear way. The logic is like for the newer version of the JavaScript, they have more syntax. It's getting more and more abstract. So the objective is to let you write powerful code with less number of characters. So that means if you are coming from another language, some of the syntax might be weird to you and you might not know what it's doing. But the definite guide, it tells you the whole story about why those tasks are designed like this. So some people complain this book is verbose, but I think it's a very good reference book. Another resource for you reference is the MDN Docs by the Mozilla. The Mozilla provides a very high standard for documenting stuff, and the MDN Docs is a very valuable source for you to know something about CSS, HTML, or JavaScript. You can also get the book called The Eloquent JavaScript, and they even provide an online version for free, because to me, the eloquent JavaScript is not detailed enough, but that's my personal perspective. So we talk about the language of JavaScript, but there are hundreds of thousands of packages, third-party packages, as well as many frameworks for the front end. For the front end, you have Angular, React. For the back end, you at least have the Express.js and Nest.js. And I just don't recommend you buy a book. You should just following other YouTubers tutoring those stuff. It is quite a meme that all this develop team, they're creating new frameworks every day, like they're updating new versions, which is not compatible with the older versions, stuff like that. So you should always go to the website for the newest stuff about those frameworks. Even you are asking ChatGPT, you need to make sure that the version is correct. We can very briefly talk about Java. So the first book is Head First Java. I think the Head First series is interesting. It's for the kids, like middle school students or kids. So it's not that boring to read. And another series is the Java for Impatient, or the JavaScript for Impatient. So the cover has a rabbit with a watch. That is the rabbit hole meme in the Alice in Wonderland. So in general, I think the Java or JavaScript for the Impatient, they are good books. So programming is not just about programming languages, it's also about the design of your code. So that's called structure or architecture. One famous book or one famous guy is Uncle Bob. So he has a book called Clean Architecture, which is really helpful for my career. The thing you need to notice is that besides the Clean Architecture, he also published books like Clean Coder, Clean Code, etc. But I personally think the Clean Architecture is the best one. It's the most important one. Another book I recommend is called The Me Thing Read Me. So it basically talks about how you can document the code, how you can test your code, log your code, and version control your code. So all those knowledge is what you need after you join a company. So that's why it's called the missing book. It's not taught in the school or in college. Another book I like is the Phoenix Project. So it talks about the three parts of the programming: the development, testing, and the maintaining. So a DevOps means you need to integrate these three stuff very closely and evolve your code very quickly based on the feedbacks. And finally, let's talk about some data structures and algorithms. So those are related to questions you are asked about when you are interviewed. As we know, we need some background information or knowledge about the data structure and the algorithm before delving into the legal questions. I don't recommend any book, but I will recommend some courses you can find online. For example, the UC Berkeley CS61B for the data structure and the CS170 for the algorithm. By watching those videos and reading textbooks and following the homework, you can almost always learning stuff by yourself. And that's all I have for today's video to cover the test about the programming. And I will see you in the next one.